So we are back on the Think Gold podcast, and today we have a really special guest. So today we have one of the most prominent figures in the medical space. He is working to bridge the gap between our perception of skin color and modern medicine. He was previously a student at Kyiv Medical University in Ukraine, and now he's the lead medical illustrator of the International Center for Genetic Disease at Harvard Medical School. He is best known for his illustration of the Black fetus and has opened the eyes of many to the groundbreaking illustrations of people of color. He is Nigerian born and just 27 years old. He has recently released a book called Beyond Skin, which we're going to be quoting here in this podcast, entitled Why Representation Matters in Medicine. Today we introduce to you none other than Chidiebere Ibe. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Ivory. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I literally had my profile. I was like, can one man have so much profile? But thank God. Yeah. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I didn't know if that introduction was long or too short, but one of the things that I struggle with on the podcast is doing a proper introduction, right? And so I really want to start laying out who you are. I think it's important. And I think, from your perspective, you're probably like, man, yeah, that's a lot, right? But I'm sure you're only 27 years. You're 27 years old. That list is only going to get longer, right? So that's
Definitely.
cool. But I just want to say, I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's 8 a.m. over here, and you're in Zambia, correct?
Right.
So it's probably about 3 o'clock over there.
Yeah, 2 in the afternoon. Yeah,
Gotcha.
2 in the afternoon. Yeah.
So you already had your jollof rice for lunch, just relaxing a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
But I just want to go right into it, Mr. Chidiebere. So you are best known for that Black fetus illustration that went viral in November 2021 last year, right? And this was like an overnight sensation, right, with social media. And you posted a picture of one of your illustrations of the Black fetus, right? And I think in the caption, you included the words, "I am Black, I am beautiful, and more work like this should be included in medical literature." And I know CNN and various other news stations had articles about you, which was probably amazing, right? And I just want to go why do you think that Black fetus illustration was the illustration that led you to go viral, when beforehand you had illustrations that were only getting, 1,000 engagements, and now this one is like all over? Just talk to me about that whole phenomenon.
All right, thank you for asking. And so the process to making that artwork was a very dicey process, I would say, because I know that the week I created the illustration was shortly after my visa was denied, right, to travel to Ukraine. And for me, when I create illustrations, I'm always, making research about what to create and typically creating and sharing the work out there. But the day I created the Black fetus illustration, I was in between a lot of contemplation, in between a whole lot of, what should I create? Should I create the Black fetus? Should I create an anatomical illustration? And for me, as highlighted in my book, right, I identify myself as a Christian, and not just a Christian, but a believer, right? And whatever I do, I try to include God as an integral factor to everything. So that point in my life, I was already doing like a GoFundMe campaign, and on the other side, it was still the time where there was a lot of racism for Black women, where they were not seen and heard, where, being a Black woman typically affected healthcare outcome for you and your child. So it was particularly in that moment, but something striking happened in my life that period where I was still conversing because I was about leaving for school. I didn't have the resources to go to school. I didn't have the money, but so I understand the principle of seed time and harvest, right? The principle of sowing, and and then I had a conversation with my elder brother. He was like, "Okay, why not just sow a seed in someone's life, And okay, but I don't even have the money to sow the seed, right? My account was just like let's say like $100 or so.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I said, okay, I was gonna empty my account. I was gonna just empty the account and sow the seed. So that morning I was having my morning devotion. I wasn't praying so much. I was just telling God, okay, God, I want you to show me who I'm going to sow this seed into, right? And God showed me this woman in my church. She has a hunchback. She's a dwarf, and she's someone that people really neglect in church, basically. So I said, okay, I was going to sow this seed into her life. Then I told God, right, to prove that this is your word, right, as I'm going to go to church today, let that be the first person I will see in church as I'm going to church. So on arriving at church that morning, she was the very first person I saw in church. So I had to obey God. I withdrew the money, I gave it to her. Then we did like a 7 days prayer. Then on the seventh day, now before then, I had created this illustration, I had shared on social media. The reactions were basically just normal, right?
Hmm.
20 likes, 20 comments, like little reactions, all that. But the night after we had the seventh day prayer, I slept, I woke up. I it's okay. It was crazy. Like, I was like, okay, what's really happening? I had my email was buzzing up, social media was on fire, but my followers were increasing. People were CNN started sending email, BBC. I was, oh my God, what is really happening? Then at that point, people started sharing their personal stories, like mothers who had experienced racism from their physician, started talking about their experiences, and that story also garnered some traction. People started resonating with the story. Also, people started sharing their own experiences. So it was just like a boomerang of events and and occurrences that just made everything just go like a wildfire, and it was really eventful. Like, it was really, really a period of my life that I really can't get over. And sometimes it's still like a dream to me. But I always thank God for everything.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to jump into that because I want to go back to faith. But before I do that, what do you think is the reason why God had you empty your bank account and deliver all your money to that person at the church, right? Because like, why do you think it was that specific situation that he wanted you to do? Do you think it was, in my mind, I'm thinking like he wanted to kind of humble you before he exalted you, right? And kind of see how much you were willing to, I don't want to say sacrifice, but to put trust in him, right? Do you almost feel like that? Because I mean, you had
Yes,
$100 in your name, right?
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, right, I would say that the way God works is that before he gives you a thing, right, he tests your faith, right? Are you willing? Are you able to withhold, or are you able to pay a price to get what is about to come? Right? In as much as I had paid the price of hard work, diligence, commitment, right? But you see, he was about testing my faith. Am I willing to let go of what I needed so much? But at that point, I needed money to go to school, and the only money I had was what God was asking of, right? And I was okay, but at that point, I knew that $100 can take me to Ukraine. So I might as well just give it out already, right? So
Mm,
what's the point of keeping it? The money I would never go as far as even booking a flight from where I am to wherever I should go to. So it was as serious as that. Then I was like, okay, because I knew for me that, I mean, the way God revealed that to me was so abnormal, right? Because most time when God revealed things to me, it's always through my dreams, right? But that morning I wasn't having any particular. It wasn't a serious prayer. It was just like some seconds conversation, and I saw this flash, right? And then I knew that this is okay. This is real. But to make it more real, okay, God just have to just make her be the person I will see in church. I'm going to church. So that all the event aligned together, I knew that God was about to do something, right? I just obeyed God. I gave it out. My account was empty, and I just hoped for a change. And I realized that God was about to do something. And that's how God really works, right? When He's about to catapult a man to a particular height in life, He abases you, right? He brings you to the lowest point in life where you
Uh-huh.
feel like everything is lost. Because if you begin to predict your own life, begin to predict where you would be, right? There will be a point to give him all the glory, to give him all the thanks, right? So at a point where I realized that, okay, I am here not because I worked so hard, not because I had everything figured out, right? And he just did it for me. So that's why
Wow.
all thanks can only be to him, right?
Wow.
So it's really that the factor.
That's incredible, Chidiebere. And it's incredible. I'm going to quote your book right here. I think it's page 9, very early in the book. You say,
Yeah.
my life got better, and I can't thank God enough for all he has done for me. I give credit to him as a source of my success and as the one who has helped me achieve my purpose here on earth. For this reason, I choose to acknowledge him wherever I go. And that's on page 9, I believe, in that first chapter. And that is
Right.
profound, man, because for you to be, where you're at right now, to go viral, social media, all illustrations being used by institutions across the world, you're probably getting reached out to do a lot of, great stuff. You say, hey, but listen, it's not, all me, right? Like God is the source of all of this, right? And you point back to him. And I think that was just like, when I'm reading this book, I'm like, okay, there's a reason why he has to come on this podcast, right? Um, but now let's shift into why that illustration was important, right? So let me ask you this. Why do you think God, right, put in you this gift of illustration? And what do you think he wants you to do with this work? And what change do you want to see come about with these illustrations, right? And we're going to touch on this later, but just briefly describe kind of, I guess, the overall purpose that you feel within this and why it's so important. Because a lot of people hear in Black fetus and they're just like, what is this, right? So like, can you kind of explain some of that?
Right. From the scratch, right, I would say that for me, by birth and by default, I'm just someone like I'm a defender, right? I'm a defender, and for me, I may not have all the oratory power to defend people, right? But I hate seeing people being oppressed, right? Because I had a friend of mine who was a chronic stutterer, and I was a chronic stutterer also,
What is
right?
that?
But if people made him feel bad, like like a stammerer, like someone that stammers, like a stutterer.
Okay. I'm not following.
Yeah, I
A
had a friend of mine who
stutterer?
was like a stutterer, like someone that stammers, like while
Oh,
speaking,
okay,
he
got you. Like a
stammers.
speak like a
So
speaking impediment.
impediment, yeah.
Got you.
So I
Okay.
had a friend of mine who had a chronic, and I was also a chronic stutterer, you know. But most time when people would make him feel bad, I would defend him, even if I didn't know how to speak very well, right? Even if we had the same impediment. So I realized that I was just more of a defender. Then God was about using my art skills to make me create illustration that would defend the minority group, right? Because I started using my artwork to defend people who couldn't speak for themselves, right? The black
Mm,
people who were not given equal healthcare attention, the people of color generally who were not seen and heard, and significantly, right? That was God leading me to a point where He was about to not just use my voice, but to use the innate ability He gave to me to
mm,
advocate for people. So, and I've seen this, in greater ways. For example, when I shared my artwork and it went viral, people started saying things like, for 50 years in the healthcare space, I haven't seen an image of a black fetus in my entire life. People started saying, we've long waited for this. People started calling me that I'm the Africa Fragnator. A lot of names like the father of illustrations and all of that, because it was like an eye opener to everybody. And I would say majority of the medical company started realizing their errors, and we're fixing their errors already, right?
mm,
And I would say that is what God can do with just a single man. And I would say significantly, black people generally has not been given that equal healthcare attention.
mm,
And this has affected healthcare outcome. And for me, I believe that artworks or creating direct illustration are also strategies, right, to advocating for this minority group. I know maybe I might be ahead of myself, but I mean, I'm just talking about it already because I think it's important to I mean, in the medical world, one of the greatest senses, right, is the sense of sight, right? So if I see myself more, right, I would feel more confident in myself. So that's why
Mm.
creating diverse illustrations like this are very important because they'll create a sense of worth and belonging in the minds of people and will create a system where everybody can be seen and heard.
Mm. It's crazy that you say, the importance of seeing, you know, perception and seeing yourself in spaces, specifically in the medical world, right? It's so important for confidence building. And initially when I heard about your illustrations, right, you know, the first thing I thought about was, wow, this is amazing because it's showing that there's equality, right? Like we want to be seen in those spaces, right? And then I,
Right,
I was listening to some of your stuff, your interviews, and reading the book, and I said, whoa, this is beyond just equality. But the fact of the matter is that in the medical space, and you're going to talk about this later, but like skin conditions and diseases, they show up differently on Black people's skin, right? And so
right,
not only is it harder to self-diagnose because you're only seeing these conditions on white people's skin, but also, you mentioned a statistic of only 4.5% of illustrations in medical textbooks are people of color. Um,
right,
and so that means the medical professionals aren't studying what it looks like on people of color skin, right? And that was just a
right.
whole nother level. Um, and we're gonna talk about this later. I don't want you to jump into it quite yet, Chidiebere, but I want to talk about, okay, like early life, right? In Nigeria, right? Growing up in Nigeria, what was that like?
Yeah. Well, I would say that I never really had the best of life growing up, right? As a teenager, as a child in Nigeria. I just came from this very small family who were basically living from hand to mouth, right? We would just go out, look for ends means, get some food and eat, and that would be basically all right. And for me, it was a factor. It was like a defining moment for me. I remember when because my mom was more like the breadwinner, right? Because my dad wasn't having so much work, and my mom was literally taking care of us. And so growing up was very difficult because having one person who was basically providing, and losing that one person to cancer was now my world crumbling because I was like, what's the fate of me, right? What's the
Mm,
hope, right? That the only one person I had is gone, right? And but I would say it was a point where I decided to take up the mantle to be responsible with myself, right? To start learning skills, to start being a better person, start improving myself. And I would say it was very, very difficult. But when God is about to prepare a man for a great thing, he passes through them, he makes them pass through fire, right, to prepare him for that greater destiny. And for me, I would say it has been a process that I am grateful for that I had passed through. And I think it has built character and virtue in me. And so I mean, just thank God for everything because it's really tough. I mean, I don't even have the time to really give in detail how the journey had been,
yeah,
but I mean, it's a really, really difficult process.
I understand that. Speaking of your mother, right? I know you spoke about her in the book, and one of the things that I wrote down here is just like the topic of just like pain to passion, right? And I think
Right,
in our darkest moments, they often fuel us to become a better version of ourselves, right? And another way of saying
right,
this is, unfortunately and fortunately, in this life, pain often fuels passion, right? And when you talk about
right.
December 25th, 2011, how has that day impacted you and ultimately your purpose with illustrations?
Yeah. So that day was a very, very drastic moment for me. But I mean, to cut it short, how it impacted my passion for medicine and illustration was after when my mom passed, right, I had to wash the clothes she was wearing. It was just soaked with blood and everything. So while I took off the clothes, I was washing them, and my hands were literally soaked in a pool of blood. And I told myself, right, okay, I must be a doctor. my dreams of being a doctor, I'm not going to give up my dreams because, I mean, cancer now was terrible. So
Mm,
at that moment, I was worshiping, I was thinking so many things. I was like, my dreams are valid. I am going to keep on becoming, keep on achieving my dreams. So that particular moment had defined so much for me. But I mean, because I believe that my passion for medicine was what led me to go into illustrations, and I would really attribute that to that significantly to that day that of when my mom passed.
wow. Wow. How old were you at that time, Chidiebere?
I can't really remember how old I was. I think I was, is it 18 or 19? Not so sure. Can't remember. I was pretty young, 10 or 19.
Wow.
So,
Wow. That's profound because I mean that is probably your purpose all over you, right? Like that's driving you, right? That's a huge factor in what you're doing. And I think that only makes you, like I said, unfortunately, it makes you a better human being and it makes you a better illustrator and a better doctor. And it's crazy
all
how
right.
there's that contrast, right? I don't know if it's God or what it is, but things like that, I'm sure just made you question your faith, I'm sure, but ultimately I feel like you've turned it into purpose, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times where I had to question myself, question my faith, but ultimately, what's the goal, right? If you're going to question your faith, right, at the end, you will still come back to your faith because
Mm,
that was the only way I could run to get refuge and to get comfort. So it was a lot to take in, but I really thank God for the process.
gotcha. So one thing that I want to touch as well, Chidiebere, is it took you 7 years to get into medical school. 7 years, man. That is an incredible amount of time. How tough was that, and how did you remain positive over all those years?
Whew, it was really a journey, as I earlier said, for me, medicine was more than just a luxury, it was a passion, right? Even before my mom passed, right, I wanted to be a doctor and I was applying to medical school, writing the exams, I wasn't going in. For me, what kept me going was that I realized that I had no life, right? I really had no life outside medicine, right? For me, that was my thought, right? I was like, I'm really gonna be nothing if I'm not a doctor, right? I'm really gonna amount to nothing in life. I'm not a doctor. And in as much as I was creative, I have a lot of artistic skills, right? For me, I didn't see a life with those things. I just felt like those were, the things I would do to give myself that pleasure, not the things I would do to make meaning out of life in quotes. So I had to say, okay, if medicine doesn't work, I'll keep on trying. So I tried it for like 3 years. For like 2 years, first of all, it wasn't working. I then applied to a first degree in chemistry. I did a first degree in chemistry. Well, actually, in chemistry, I was still writing the exams that should allow me to go to med school. It wasn't working. So my family said that if I'm going to go to med school, that I am on my own, right? They're not going to sponsor me to medical school. I have to sort myself out. At that moment, I realized that I was alone in my journey. So I had to
Wow.
say, okay, now there's a need to learn some skills because you're going to pay your tuition eventually if you get into medical school, right?
Mm,
So I started learning artwork. I started learning graphic design, photography, videography, just a bit to raise little money from different places. And it was really tough, right? But I mean, now my family is like, oh, go to medical school, right? Yeah, you should go to medical
now
school
they're
now.
now they're on board, right?
Yeah, you're good, right?
Yeah, there's a
So
saying
it
in
it it was
I was gonna say
yeah. Go ahead.
there's a saying in football, right? Like when one person has sacrificed everything to get to the NFL, right? And a lot of people doubted them.
Right,
Not a lot of people believed them, right? Then they finally get to the National Football League and they play on TV every Sunday, right? And now everybody
right,
says, "Oh, that's my cousin. You're my cousin," right? Everybody wants to claim you as family, right? And it's kind of like that
right.
sense. But one thing that I didn't want to
Yeah,
gloss over is you found a mentor very early on, right? And I think the importance of mentors is so important. And I think it's one of the most important steps to achieve anything great, right? And one of the things that stuck
Right.
out to me in the book is that you connected with Dr. Sydney, right? After applying for a job there. And he basically was like,
Right.
I'm sorry, but we don't have any money to give you. And then I'll let you tell the rest. I'll let you tell the rest.
Yeah, so he responded that there was no money to give me, and because I love medicine and I love neurosurgery, and I said, okay, let me volunteer for you, right? You don't have to pay me. So I decided to volunteer. I started creating graphic designs for him. From there, the designs were very beautiful, and people started asking, "Who is creating this design for this?" Because there was a massive change from their design, from who was creating design for. Like there was a big change. They're like, "Who is creating this design for you?" So he said, "Oh, it's this guy." And little by little, the other organizations were like, "Okay, come on, do designs for us." Now, they were not paying me, right? They were not paying me at all, and I was okay because I was happy. I was happy always. Then I was just this naive African boy. I was so happy talking to some white medical doctors who were like, "Nice job, nice job." I was so excited about it, and for me, that was just all I needed. And so I was doing everything with enthusiasm, never asking for money, never asking for anything. But over time, I realized that people were always coming to me to do designs and everything. So for like 2 years, right? 2 years. The first time I ever made money from design was just in 2021 when I started in 20. Okay, for 1 year rather, was when I actually made money. My first $100 I made from those. I was so excited and that was more like an appreciation from the person that I did the design for. So over the years, while working with him, he started seeing my artworks and was like, okay, so you are artistic and you have passion for medicine. Why not go into medical illustrations? I was like, oh, really? Okay, so what's that? Because I don't know what that actually was. So he explained, I had to make a research on the internet. I saw the anatomical illustrations. I was like, no, I can't do this, right? Because I wasn't a medical student. I didn't know medicine. I didn't know anatomy. So how am I going to draw these complex structures? I remember the first day I picked up a medical textbook. It was frustrating. I didn't know where to start from, right? But over the years, I started growing, and then I had just this very, very very terrible computer, very bad, it was slow, and a computer mouse. It was, whew. So I had to just learn how to use the mouse to draw, learn how to use
Yeah.
the mouse to shade, and it was difficult. But I realized those little moments were the defining moments, right?
Hmm.
Because they really gave me the ability to think outside the box, right? For
Hmm.
example, if I use a mouse to draw, right, and I had an illustration that I wanted to illustrate, right? And that image was done with a complex tool. I would think, okay, how can I make this better with a crude instrument that I have, like a mouse? So with that ability to think outside the box, I began to think of creative processes to make it easier for me, right?
Wow.
And I think those are the moments where my mindset began to expand. I began to see things differently. I began to solve complex problems in a very simple way. And I would say it was really, really, really the defining moment of my illustrations, journey. And so on and on, it just kept improving. He would always correct my illustrations and say, okay, make this red, make this blue, take this out, all of that. So over the time, I started growing mastery. I started learning. I started gaining, the experience, and that was what has really led me to this point.
Wow. When reading that section in the book, I just thought about like, and I had to ask myself this question of like, how much do I really love the things that I say I love? How passionate am I about some of this stuff, right? Like, how far am I willing to go? And I think that's a question that we all need to ask ourselves is like, number one, are we willing to do this for free, right? Can we put ourselves in situations where we're not looking for a monetary return on our craft? And and I think it's when you decide that when you made that decision in your mind, I almost feel like something to decide to work for free. It's like almost something clicked in your mind, and you were like this is bigger than just illustrate. Like this is bigger. Like you could see the future, you could see the vision, right? And you had this, you seem like a real good. You have a good imagination. And I think that's important to have.
All right.
And I'm going to just read this expert on page 11 about some of this stuff that you're talking about, of where I feel like this is some of your passion in this book. Page 11, starting at,
Yeah.
I had no idea what medical illustration was. So I had to teach myself. I had to read anatomy textbooks, which was very difficult because I wasn't in medical school. At the time, I had just an old computer and a computer mouse. That was all I used to learn medical illustration. It was very difficult, but to butcher this, there was no power supply where I lived in Nigeria. I had to travel for about an hour from my house to the church so I could use the power source there to recharge my laptop. I did this for a year. Most times I didn't have transportation to go to church, so I had to borrow money and pay my way to the church just because I was eager to learn medical illustration. Wow, that is phenomenal. And it goes to show the lakes that you went through um, to get here, right?
Right. Right.
um,
Ooh,
there's one more
it's a
thing that I
lot.
wanted to read while I'm here. There's one more thing that I wanted to read that I circled after this. And this kind of, I feel like everybody who is seeking something, they get to a point in their lives when they're working on their purpose and their passion, and they start to realize that it's bigger and it's deeper than just what they're doing, right? So, page 12 to start that page, I was beginning to get attuned to what I was doing, and my mind began to conceive deeper ideas for medical illustration. I started seeing medical illustrations not just as medical artworks, but as a message and tool to communicate emotions and empathy to people. And these are the values I communicate through my illustrations. Wow. So it's deeper, right? It has meaning, right? And you're not just drawing these,
A lot of meaning.
you're not just using these illustrations just as things to get likes on social media, right?
Nah, nah. Sometimes the things we seek for are really things that we don't really get sometimes. For me, I have never sought for fame, right? I have never wanted to be famous, and it was never something I was doing. I wasn't doing illustrations to be famous and to go. That's never been in my plan, right? But I was just doing it because I loved it, right? And I was doing it sincerely because I wanted to see more of these included, right? And even when I would create illustrations years before and have just one like, and that one like would be for me, right?
Mm,
I was okay, right? I was okay because I was doing something that I felt I was happy with myself. Because most time when I'm illustrating, I really lose track of time, and I felt happy about it. So even if I didn't have the likes and the reaction, then I mean it was fine, right? But for me, understanding that this was a tool where you can communicate emotion and empathy, right? And people ask me a lot of questions. What makes you very different from other illustrators, right? Because I'm sure there are other people that draw black skin illustration. I was like, oh yes, there are people that draw black skin illustration. Yeah, that is true. But the difference is that, right, when I create an illustration, I try to see myself in the shoe of the person I'm illustrating, right?
mm,
For example, I'm illustrating an ovarian cancer, for example. Ovarian cancer, right, was the case of my mother, right? So how to say, okay, now, in as much as I want to make this medically correct, how can I tell a story with this illustration? Because people relate to stories more than data,
mm,
right? So most times I see how to immerse myself in the illustrations and create a story out of them, right? And this has really been the secret for my illustrations, right? So in as much as, and I think that's what makes me very unique in my work. And that's why when you see my artwork, they always provoke emotion, because from provoking emotion, right, you're able to address this problem, right? So it's not just about black skin, but it's about the foundation to the reason why there is no black illustration, right?
mm,
So because if we typically just draw black images and just share it out there, right, it's not directly addressing a problem. But when we create black illustration, right, buttressed with an emotion, right? Buttressed with a story, right? And reason why this image is important. That is when you're addressing a problem, right? And
uh-huh.
this has been a significant key to my illustrations. And I would say that, I mean, the world is yet to see what I get to bring out. And I know that the Lord is guiding me, and it's gonna be very big. Because recently I started a series which I call Some babies are born black, right? It's a series of illustrations where I'm
Woo! That's a
painting.
fire title. That is amazing title. Oh, I love that. I love it.
It is.
I love it.
It is. And I mean, because of school stress and everything, I haven't been able to finish the work. But I know after my exams right now, I'm gonna put my time into making it happen, and it's gonna be amazing.
Oh, I cannot wait for that to happen. That's amazing. Speaking of the problem, Chidiebere, right now, I think this is going to be the most important topic here on the show, right? And let's dive into that problem of racism in medicine, right? Because we talk about racism and prejudice in every aspect of life. We talk about the impact it has on schools, the impact it has on laws and regulations, the impact it has on the way that police officers view people of color, but we don't really hear it being talked about in medicine, right? It's a problem, but it's not really presented to us as a problem the same way it is in other areas of life, right? Can you explain how
Right.
can you just explain racism in medicine? And you can go broad, you can go, into the weeds with it. Just overall, give us an understanding of what that is.
So racism in medicine is basically a scenario where um, you and I, right, or me as a black person and the counterpart, right, there is a differentiation or there is a difference in how we would receive healthcare, which on the basis is because of how we look. That's as simple as I can explain, right? For example, if I am black, right, and I have a friend who is white, we don't receive equal healthcare attention, right? And people now have to pay attention. Why is that so? Why should race be a factor to how I receive healthcare? Why should my skin color be a factor to how I receive healthcare? Why should my educational background, right, be a factor to how I receive healthcare? But I thought healthcare was a universal asset, was something that should be universal, should be accessible by everybody, irrespective of your age, of your gender, of your race, of your ethnicity. But yet it is not so, right? The world have made everything very stereotypical. We have made everything so like before you assess a thing, right, you need to look like the owner who created the thing, in quote, right? So for example, medicine came from the Western world, right? And before I receive healthcare attention, I need to look like those who created healthcare, basically. And because physicians have also, I wouldn't blame physicians, right? But because they are that the process through training in medical school, they're not educated about racism, right? Because for me, I think racism is a very big topic, right? That if being integrated in the curricular of medical school, right, we wouldn't be talking much about racism in medicine because now physicians would understand, right, that there is an issue like bias in medicine, that there is an issue where a physician disregard a patient's complaint because the patient is a black person. And this is premised on lack of knowledge. This is premised on lack of resources. For example, looking at dermatological perspective, where most resources, most images, right, that are out there in medical textbook and public literatures just show white people, right? And these textbooks are what most medical students are being trained with, right? So once they are trained as medical students, they come out as physicians, they still don't know how to diagnose skin condition on black people. And that's why when I'm black and I go to the physician, I tell them, oh, I'm having a rash. And because he or she doesn't know what that looks like, he would disregard my complaint and say that is just something that is not, it's infinitesimal and doesn't have a meaning. And because of that, because I'm curious, I would want to self-diagnose myself, and with that, worsen health outcome. So this
Mm.
is how racism, right, is integral, right? It has been ingrained into medicine because and this is not just about in the US, this is not just about in the UK, it's also around the world, basically, where there is no adequate representation. And looking at the area of maternal health, for example, where statistically, right, Black women are 3 to 4 times likely to die from child or birth complications, right, than white women. Then why is that so? Because there's a misconception that if you're a Black woman, right, you have a high tolerance for pain, right? So most time when a woman is pregnant and she complains that she's having some cramps, right? The physician would assume, I mean, you are a black person, you should know how to endure pain, right? Instead of prescribing medication, you would have an assumption that she should be enduring. So because of that, there's been the healthcare outcome has been deteriorating regarding Black women. And so overall, right, this is racism in medicine, where we are being selective, we are being stereotypical about who receive healthcare and about how well these people receive healthcare, and this affects overall the statistics of healthcare outcome.
Wow. There's so much in this book beyond skin. And I think that, we're not going to go over it all today in this podcast, but I think people listening should really buy the book to dive deeper into these topics. But speaking into, racism in medicine, right? And, you talk about in the book the psychological, effects of skin representation is largely psychological, right? I kind of get what you mean, but I want to understand that more. So is that just you saying that at the end of the day, it's just something that we make believe in our head that is there's a difference between black and white? Is that what you mean to say in the book there when you say that skin representation is largely psychological?
Yeah, so basically, some years ago, I think in the 1960s, there was a test that was carried out, which is the black doll test. So the black doll test was a test to determine where Black people would basically how they see themselves, right? So the white doll was kept, the black doll was kept. So Black children were asked which of the doll had the positive characteristic, and they pointed at the white doll, and they asked which of the doll had a negative characteristic, and they pointed at the black doll. And they then asked them which of the doll looked like you, right? And they fell back to realize that the doll they pointed that had a negative character was what looked like them. And
Mm-hmm.
this were kids, right? This were kids who were not exposed to to the negativity of the world, basically, right? But they already knew what attributing negative characteristic is to a black doll. Now that simply say it is a psychological information, right? It is something that has been passed on by default from birth, by default, where if you see a black person, he or she has a negative connotation. If you see a black person, he or she has less of what to offer in the community. So it is a psychological perspective, and that's why, and and that is premised on information, right? And the only way to addressing information like that, right, is to replace that information with a superior information, right?
Mm.
For example, if you say I'm a black person, if there is this cliche, I'm a black person, right? And because I'm black, right, I have a high tolerance for pain, and that my nerve endings are less sensitive to pain, right? That is a negative information, right? The only way to addressing that is to address that with a better information, with data that the difference between you as a white person and me as a black person is just the skin color, right? Skin deep, we are all the same basically, and that is a
Wow.
factor. That is a factor, and that's why I titled my book "Beyond Skin." Right?
Mm.
If we have the privilege or we have the opportunity to look beyond the skin of our patients, then truly we can be saying we are offering a good healthcare service to our community. So in context, it is a psychological perspective, and we need to address that by creating visuals and by educating people. And that for me is a strategy.
Amen. Some examples of this, page 34, chapter 2, that third to last paragraph, you say, J. Marion Sims, known as the father of modern gynecology, I'm sorry, performed experiments on enslaved Black women without anesthesia in the 19th century. He believed that Black women were less susceptible to pain and therefore did not require anesthesia. And when you look at an example like that, I mean, this is in tandem with our history. Like this is where this comes from, right? These beliefs and ideologies, they come from the past, they come from history. And
Right.
until someone like yourself can break that psychological barrier and kind of show that, hey, like these are actually just myths, these aren't true, right? And I think that will then have, in turn have an effect on, society and how we view ourselves, right? Because,
Right.
most often, people of color are, what is it, 10 times higher to live in a situation where the economics are significantly lower, right? Talking about places in poverty, places where there's limited access to healthcare. And then you're telling them these things about, these conditions, that you're more susceptible because this color of your skin. We don't know how to treat these certain things because we've never seen it on your skin. Like, there's no wonder why people of color um, are more likely to suffer from these illnesses, right? And it's not because,
Right.
like you said, it's not that like we can get them easier. It's literally just how it's presented to us as a society. And I think that it's so key. Even that black doll test, and I gotta iterate this because this was the most eye-opening thing I think a part of the whole book is that black doll test, also known as in the 1940s, psychologists Kenneth and Mamie Clark. The study was designed to examine the psychological effects of segregation on black children in the United States. The Clarks presented a group of black children ages 3 to 7 with two dolls that were identical in every way except for their skin color. One doll was white and the other was black. The researchers then asked the children a series of questions, such as which doll was nicer, which doll they would play with, and which doll looked like them. Results from the study were significant. The majority of black children chose the white doll as the nicer and more attractive doll and as the doll they would prefer to play with. They also identified the white doll as being more similar to them than the black doll. Whew. Like that, when I read that, I just thought about how much do black people's confidence suffer because of this. And then we talk about a more marginalized group. How much do black women suffer because of these ideologies, right? Hmm.
It's a lot, it is really, really a lot to take in. And I would say basically, it also affects how black mothers, right? I mean, it affects their confidence level, right? On how they feel when they're around a doctor that doesn't look like them. So you see, invariably, right, this test, right, affect them also, right? Where because you understand that okay, if I'm being attended to by a white physician, he may not treat me the same way he would treat right a white patient also. So this has affected the mindset of black people that most times they prefer to stay at home and not seek healthcare attention because they know that they won't be given that equal attention. So it is really devastating, and I hope to really see this change happen sooner.
Hmm. So, Mr. Chidiebere, we are coming to an end of the podcast, right? And I thought this would be cool to do to kind of end the podcast. Um, I'm going to say a condition or a disease, and that you have illustrated in the book here and talked about. And I want you to either give me a quick misconception or a quick fact, whatever way you want to go. Okay, is that okay with you? So the first one here,
Yeah.
misconception or fact, vitiligo.
Vitiligo, people assume that if you have vitiligo, that you are just having like a makeup, right? It is like sort of like a makeup, and it is really not real. And recently, people started mimicking those that have vitiligo. People that were normal started using makeups to act like they're vitiligo and making
Wow.
jokes with vitiligo, and that they were just people that I saw that had like sort of epilepsy sort of. So it is a myth. It is a misconception about vitiligo.
Okay, let's go with breast cancer.
Breast cancer, people have the outcome of breast cancer have been noticed to increase, right, among the white people. Statistically, right, breast cancer affects more white people than black people, but yet black people die from breast cancer than white people,
More.
right?
Oh,
And that is
okay.
because yeah, so breast cancer affects more white people than black people, but the death outcome is that black people die more from breast cancer than white people, right? So you see that the outcome generally is not improving, but it's improving for a particular set of people, right? And that is because black people, right, do not have access to quality education, do not have access to quality screening centers, and this overall affect the healthcare outcome for black people.
Hmm. Okay. Down syndrome.
Down syndrome, basically, I bet you right now, if you Google on it right now, you would not see any image of Black people with Down syndrome, right? You might see pictures, right, but not illustration. And people started saying things like regarding Down syndrome, autism, right? They would say like Black people don't have autism, Black people don't have Down syndrome, right? So I decided to create that in a bid to educate people that yes, we can have Down syndrome, and it's very common here in Africa too.
Okay. Last one here. Female genitalia. And before I go into this one, yes, I'm talking about female genitalia on the Thankful podcast. You put together an illustration of a Black woman's female genitalia on Instagram, and it got over 16,000 reactions, right, in responses. I'm just going to read some of those real quick before you give your misconception or fact. So these were some of the comments to your post of that illustration of the female genitalia. As a kid, I noticed that tampon box inserts showed white genitalia only. I wondered why mine did not look that way. People need to know that light pink is not the only color for genitalia. It can be very dark and even multicolored for us. Another person says, she feels seen. I feel empowered. You've done it again. Because of you, there is a new genre of artists, representation creators. Another one, another first for me. All of my OB pictures were of white genitalia. Another last person here said, beautiful and much needed. This is the first time I've seen this image of Black skin, and I think it's wonderful. So, misconception or fact, or however which way you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so concerning female genitalia, the reason that was created was because people don't see that very often, right? And people don't know how it looks like on Black people. And for me, if you look at it critically, when I create, I try to put the details like the stretch marks, right, around the pubic region, right? That is something people are shy of acknowledging that they have stretch marks, right? And so that was also, and that was like a minute detail in that illustration, but it had a significant meaning because if you people, most women it is normal to have a stretch mark right that around the pubic region, right? But most women are actually ashamed of admitting the fact that they have stretch marks over there, and also the misconception, right, that most time people don't know how this genitalia looks like on Black people, right? And significantly, women are always ashamed of seeing images that showed the genital region, right? So in a bit to show that confidence, right? In a bit to understand that, hey, this is normal, this is real, we should all accept the fact. So I decided to create that image and not just creating that add the details like the stretch mark, in a way to create an inclusive system, in a way to understand, to build that confidence among women that they are seen and they are heard, and this is how this thing could look like on a Black skin. So significantly, that was the reason why that was created.
And, the reaction has been pretty positive.
Very, very. Literally, some persons were like, "Oh, why post genitalia illustrations online? I mean, it should be private, you know." But I'm a medical artist, right? Everything is medical. There are no other side to my illustration, just
Yep.
strictly medical, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so last section of the podcast that I end every podcast with, and it's entitled "The Deep End," right? So just fill in the blanks here, okay, Mr. Chidiebere? I am nothing without.
God,
The world needs.
you and I,
My biggest joy is.
seeing people happy,
Hmm. Our greatest battle is.
ourselves.
Hmm. Awesome. Okay, so what is next for Mr. Chidiebere Ibe? Where do you go from here? What are you striving to accomplish? What's next?
Should that be one word or a sentence?
No, this is the end of this is not the fill in the blank section anymore. That would be really impressive if you could put one word in there. Everything.
Yeah. So for me, ahead of here, there are a lot of things I'm working towards creating, I'm building, and as the year goes on, a lot of ideas are coming, right? One of the reasons I'm going to share here, right? I'm looking towards creating a community of Black illustrators, right? Because it's something that is not common, right? Not just Black illustrators, but people who are passionate about representation. Because significantly, the reason why we haven't seen much of these images is because we have very small number of people who are doing the same thing, right? But if we have like an army of people, we have like a collection of people, like a group of people who are passionate about this, who are constantly putting out their artwork out there to advocate for people. I believe we would normalize the system, we would normalize everything. So for me, this is what's next for me. In as much I'm looking towards finishing medical school, I'm going for my master's, being a doctor. The truth be told, right, on and on, we don't know what the future lies ahead of us, right? We are always
Mm,
striving to be a better person, to see how we can improve ourselves. But I
mm,
sure do know that it's going to get better every year. It's going to get bigger every year. And I look forward to seeing the things that I can achieve, right? And yeah, sure, that's it.
mm. Amen. Amen. Last thing I want to say is Champion Change Africa. What is that and how can we support?
So Champion Change Africa is an NGO that I started. The NGO is focused towards empowering mentorship, and training young people. Because I realized many young people would come to me and say, "Okay, you are young, you are successful. How did you do it? Right? How did you grow? What were the lessons you learned?" And I'll be like, "Okay, so this is it, right? I have a lot of stories to share, and I'm sure people like me have similar stories to share. So why not let us come together, right, and see how to empower young people." So last year, October, we had our first launch event. We had over 1,500 young people in Nigeria gathered together. So we brought several speakers from different places. It was massive. The videos on YouTube it was massive. We had people came out in number, and what happened was that we tried to see how to encourage people and to support, right? Because I realized that in as much as we are trying to encourage them, most of them really need support to achieve anything that they need. So we had like a little pitch section where people would like pitch their idea, the thing they wanted to do, and the team we just supported them to achieve. Those that needed a laptop, we gave them money to buy a laptop. Those that needed money to start a little business, we gave them money to start a business. So this basically it's more like a foundation, right, where we encourage young people to be change makers in the environment, right, to
Mm,
be to leave their comfort zone to achieve something great. So that is more like the crux of the foundation. And I would say that with good partnership, we can make it bigger. We could see how to expand within Africa and the world at large. And we are looking towards collaborating with a lot of organizations, right? Bringing speakers from outside of Nigeria to Nigeria, giving providing people little grants for them to really push themselves out there. And for me, right, my success is also, in as much as God is a factor, mentorship and someone that took me on his shoulder was an important journey for me. And I really
mm.
want to be able to give that to other young people through my foundation. And yeah, so we're hoping to see it grow bigger and bigger over here. So that's just what Champion Africa is all about.
Chidiebere, I would love to connect offline and see, if there's anything I can do to help promote on that on social media. 'Cause I think that's amazing. I'm also here in DC, so a lot of things can be organized here in Washington DC for that as well, which we can connect about. Um, but lastly, where can people reach you? And maybe I'll put your email in the bio, just if there's any illustrators out there that want to connect with you and the people in the medical field want to connect with you, so they can reach out to your email. But just real quick, what's your Instagram name so people can see these illustrations? And yeah,
Yeah, my Instagram name is Ebere Illustrate, like Ebere Evere and Illustrate, one word together. And that is just the name I have for my social media, for my Twitter, for my Instagram, then for LinkedIn and Facebook, it's just Chidiebere Ibe.
got you. Well, Mr. Eby, we appreciate you taking the time all the way from Zambia. God bless you. God bless what you're doing. The impact that you're having is amazing. Thank you so much. And, this has just been an eye opening podcast. And I think this is one of the best podcasts I've ever recorded. And I'm so thankful that you made it on.
Thank you so much for having me. And I would say this is significantly an amazing podcast for me, like being able to really express myself, talk about everything in detail. And it was really conversational. And I hope it's blessed so many lives and people who listen to this.
Awesome. Thanks, Chidiebere.